Hey, this is Darren from Property Prosperity. Today I'm coming to you from sunny Gold Coast. Well, it's not actually sunny at the moment because it's night time, but I thought I'd have a chat to you tonight about buying an apartment. Since I'm sitting in an apartment on the 23rd floor looking out over the beautiful view and hearing the sea in the background. So I thought it might be useful for people to have a bit of an understanding on the pros and cons of buying an apartment as an investment. So one of the things to understand is when you buy an apartment for investment, generally there's two ways to buy it, I suppose. You can buy it once it's on the market and it's already built and you can go and have a look at it. Hi Isaac, thanks for joining. And so essentially that's like buying the apartment I'm sitting in right now, so you can go and have a bit of a look at it. That's a relatively easy way of doing it because you can go in there, at least you can see what you're actually getting. And likewise you can look at what rental returns are in the area. You've got comparable sales for other apartments. Generally with apartments too, imagine this one's like 46 stories, so there's going to be a lot of very similar apartments. There's going to be, if it's been around for quite a while, you're going to have a lot of comparable sales to try and work out what you think is a fair price. You're going to have a lot of comparable rentals to try and work out what is a fair rent for the property as well. And so it's going to be pretty easy to do your numbers. The other thing to understand if you're buying an apartment is essentially you don't actually own anything in particular, I suppose. So really, the thing to understand is generally apartments are what's called strata titled, which you own, essentially you own the inside of the house or in this example of the building, and everyone collectively owns the outside of the building. So because you think about it, with an apartment complex, it's you can't own a portion of it because collectively everyone has to do it all together. And so, but likewise with an apartment complex, there's things, this place has got like 4 swimming pools and it's got a gym and it's got the reception area and it's got a whole pile of different things. So someone's going to maintain all those areas as well. So you've got to put money in. That's called you have a group of people that manage this whole process, and it's called the body corporate. And the body corporate then collect all the money and then they allocate it across to maintain the property in a suitable standard, I suppose. So they bring out a whole pile of rules and regulations, all these things you need to do. So there is a lot of requirements that you'd have if you're buying an apartment relative to if you just bought a house and you just rented it out, I suppose. Because if you bought a house and you just rented it out, you can basically do whatever you want, really. If you choose not to maintain the property and you let it all run down, and obviously it's less appealing to the tenants and you're probably going to get lower rent, but at the end of the day you can do whatever you like. Whereas in an apartment complex, there's certain requirements and expectations. And in this example here, this is 46 stories high and there's probably, I don't know, at least 5 apartments on each story. So that means essentially, you've got a couple of hundred apartments. So that's a couple of hundred people all have their say on what they want to happen and what they don't want to happen. So you can imagine there's a lot of things that need to be agreed upon from the outset. So basically that's what they call the bylaws, or they set up a whole pile of rules and regulations right from the very start on what you can and can't do. So this gets back to buying an apartment. So basically you can buy the apartment as like I am now, that you can come in and have a look at it, and it's quite easily to sort of determine whether it's a relatively good investment or not, because you actually look at what all the body corporate fees are, or the costs of maintaining the property, and then so you can see whether it looks like a good return on your money or not. The other way that other people buy properties is what's called off the plan. So that basically means it's hasn't been built yet. And so what that means is generally you buy it at a price which is generally put like 10% deposit down. So let's say it's $500,000, you put $50,000 deposit down up front, and then down the track you're going to pay for the rest of it. So the other $450,000 you pay for that when the apartment's finished, basically. The issue with buying off the plan is you never get to go and have a look at it, and the other issue with it is you don't actually know what it's worth, because in reality you don't know what something's worth until someone buys it. And I suppose with the world of off the plan, it is a sort of artificial price, because at the end of the day the developers make a decision on what price they want to sell it at. Depending on where the market's at, they obviously might have to provide some incentives to get people to buy things, or likewise, just people might be really optimistic. The danger you get, let's say it takes 2 or 3 years for the actual property to be built, and in that time the market could change or things could change, and then suddenly by the time the property's built, then things may be different. And so the price you paid for it might not reflect what the market thinks. The other danger you get is all you need is that first apartment to sell once it's been built, and that sets the tone or the standard for what prices those apartments actually worth in reality. The danger for that is there's the first person that sells, if they're desperate to sell because they need the money, because they've broken up with their missus, or they just gone broke, or they owe some money to the bikies, then the problem with that is that, if they're desperate to sell, and let's say it's worth 500,000 and they need to sell it in a hurry because they need the cash, and they sell it for 400,000, that set the market. And from then on, you're going to struggle to try and sell up more than 400,000 because everyone's using that as a guide of what it's actually worth. So that's where the danger becomes, is the thing to understand when you're investing in property. It's about cash flow, so rental returns. The good thing about apartments, they look really good as far as cash flow goes. So because one of the benefits of them is you're going to get a lot of depreciation benefits, because if you look at the actual cost of the property or the asset you're buying relative to the cost of the land, so you can't actually depreciate land, whereas you depreciate the building. So imagine an apartment, it's pretty much all building because you don't really get any land, so you can appreciate the majority of the cost of what you purchased the property for. So it looks really good as far as if you want to minimize your tax, compared to if you bought a block of land on a house. It might be 200,000 block of land, $200,000 house, so only 50% of it you can actually claim is depreciable, really, because the land's it doesn't depreciate. So whereas with an apartment, almost the full amount is depreciable because most of it is going towards the building portion of it. So as far as minimizing your tax, apartments work way better. So on paper, it's going to work a lot better. So if you're looking cash flow wise, apartments are a lot better investment. The danger you get is if you're looking to invest for the long term, cash flow is really just something to try and cover your costs until you get the capital gains. So in reality, long-term investment's all about capital gains. That's where you're going to make the big money. That's where you're going to set yourself up for retirement. So that's what you should really be thinking about, is the long-term capital gains. The danger you get with investing in an apartment is you don't really know what it's going to be worth in the future after you've bought it, because you've got 2 or 3 years until it's actually built and until that first person actually sells it. So the danger is you've bought it for 500,000, obviously you're hoping for the market to go up. That first person sells their property, needs to sell it in a hurry, and they sell it for 400,000, straight away you've made a capital loss. And so regardless of what happens with any cash flow benefits, it's going to be more than offset by potentially, if the prices go down because of someone needing to sell it in a hurry. The other side of the coin, though, is if the market's cruising along and things go up over that time, you paid 500,000 and then suddenly it's really appealing and suddenly it's really highly demanded, then suddenly it's worth 600,000. So essentially you've made 100 grand and nothing's happened. So you haven't done anything. It hasn't even been built, or it's only just been built, and you've made 100 grand straight away. And then you essentially pay for it for the 500,000. And then by the time it's, and then essentially it's worth 600,000 straight away. So you've made 100 grand straight away. So I suppose because I'm quite conservative, probably because I'm from Adelaide, the danger for me is, it's almost like gambling, really. It's almost like spinning the roulette wheel and hoping it lands on black or hoping it lands on red. You can't really control what the market's going to do in 3 years' time. So it is a bit of a risk, I suppose. And the danger you get too is it's all about supply and demand for capital investment. And so if suddenly in this example here, with this apartment here, there's 200-300 apartments. Someone just said that they're having trouble with my audio, so hopefully you can hear it. Just send me a little note if you can hear it. If you can't, then I'm stuffed. But yeah, so if you, and I'll pull this thing up here so you can try and hear it a bit better. So yeah, so if you, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so basically the danger you get is basically if you're taking a bit of a risk as far as what's going to happen in the long term as far as capital gains go. Once the property's built and the first one's sold, then you sort of know where you're at and you can have a fairly reliable estimate. Hey Kylene, thanks for saying it's crystal clear. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully you understand the pros and cons of apartments now, and hopefully it all makes a bit more sense. Saying that, I come from Adelaide. We're a bit, we're not really apartment sort of capital of the world, so it's not really a big thing in Adelaide, so we're quite conservative. Whereas if you're from the Gold Coast or you're from Sydney or Brisbane or wherever you're from, apartments are a lot bigger part of the market. So so hopefully it's made a bit of sense. If you like what I had to say, then click on the like button. If you haven't liked what I had to say, then still click on the like button. And yeah, I look forward to catching up with you again soon, and I'll yeah, we'll keep in touch. If you've got anything you'd like me to talk about while I'm on a holiday, but property related, happy to have a chat, and I look forward to talking again soon. Thanks. Bye.